ATU, come on. Woo, where is everybody? Come on in the house, y'all. I know you had a good lunch. I'm trying to talk to catch my breath again. It was a good morning this morning. And I know you're waiting for the dynamic speaker of the afternoon who follows me. So I'm not even perpetrating a fraud, this first speaker. Woo, Jesus, when you're 62, it takes a lot to do that, what I just did, coming up that aisle. I'm waiting. Come on in, y'all. I had such a good time listening to everyone this morning and watching each of you as you responded to the speakers that spoke early on. It was fun watching my brother, Oscar Owens, do his thing as usual. Oscar serves on our national board for the A. Philip Randolph Institute. But more than doing that, and I know that you guys have a campaign going on, so I'm not doing any endorsements of any kind. But there's an old Negro spiritual that says, let the work I've done speak for me. You know what I'm talking about? So what I'm doing at this moment is talking about the work that he has done inside of the house of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. I had the pleasure 5 years ago of being elected its first woman president to serve the organization. Yeah. Now, I am indeed quite proud of having that honor. And I say that because those that came before me were giants. Randolph, known as the gentle giant, and Rustin, known as the man that started more hell than enough, being able to do the kinds of things inside and outside of the community that made a difference. And Brother Norm Hill, who I won't let go, who still works with the Institute on the daily basis to help give us the guidance that we really need, because you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater when you change in the water. You change the water, get some fresh water, put some old soap and whatever else, some good smelly stuff in it. You keep them children, and you keep those leaders with your arms around them to do the kinds of things like provide the guidance that helps the organization to get strong. That's why I hold on to a Norman Hill and to the philosophies of Randolph and the philosophies of Rustin to make sure that we remain strong. But for all that I have to do inside of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, whenever there was a need that the ATU could provide for us, not one time did you, and I say you because your union is not your leadership, your union is you. Not one time did you say no. And serving on our national board, Oscar Owens represented you well in that regard. Let me tell you the kind of people that we work to build as new trade unionists inside of the labor movement. Oh boy, it's a whole heap of y'all in here this afternoon, huh? We have had in the last 5 years our youth participation grow to 5 or 10, from 5 or 10 in our national conference to 100 or 125 in number. That's right, that's worth a round of applause. That has nothing to do with me, the person, that has to do with the program that's provided there. And with an increase in numbers comes an increase in responsibility. And every time we have looked to your leadership and to you, the membership of ATU, to help us meet those needs, you have said yes. Just recently in St. Louis, is Gwen, isn't that Gwen's name? Where's Gwen? She may not be in the room right at the moment, but when we couldn't figure out how to move the body of our conference around the city of St. Louis, we made a phone call. And it was late, as we normally are. She figured it out. Here are some passes on transit. Here's an opportunity for us to figure out how we can move folk around. And that happened. When we were out in Oakland, which is the craziest transportation system I have ever tried to operate on. I ended up going the wrong way myself, and I do read English. Your union helped us to move a large body of delegations around that entire city. So your work has spoken for you in helping young people who I can give you two examples that I would be remiss if I did not raise it. One young man that lives in Anacostia, which is right across the river outside of Washington, D.C. He is now 19 years old, comes from a family that's struggling, had an uncle that belonged to ATU, but his mom and his dad did not make it, and he was home with his mother from the time he was 2. That 19-year-old young brother had never been outside of Anacostia, had never come to downtown Washington, D.C., had never traveled outside of the District of Columbia. And through the help of unions like yours, he has now been able to come to 3 conferences of the A. Philip Randolph Institute and saw outside of the poverty and restrictions that his circumstances lead him to. That young man said to me this past August, when I saw him, he came up and gave me a big hug. I said, and I won't call his name. I said, why do you always hug me? I said, it feels good and I like it. Old ladies like that. He said, because I only get a hug when I come to APRI. Now, if you think that's an isolated case, it is not. We've got to do a good job with our young people in order to make new young trade unionists, in order to keep this labor movement strong. That's right, we do, we do. And in addition to that, from the young students who've come to the A. Philip Randolph Institute, we have moved through our young forces 5 young trade unionists who are now working full-time for labor unions because they got the foundation that was provided through the assistance that come from other trade unionists that care. Am I making any sense to you? Am I making any sense to you? That's just the young side. And from those who are activists that are here in the room, you had 9 folk from Baltimore that was in St. Louis this year, and 1 from Louisville and 1 from Washington, D.C. If you're in the room right now, I'm going to ask you if you would please stand up so that your brothers and sisters can see who's helping in that kind of work. Robert Burley from Baltimore and Bertrand Deloach. Okay, here come the glasses, y'all. Gregory Diggs, I know he's here. I hope he's not outside getting another sandwich. Larry Duncan, or Dunham, Anthony Johnson, David McClure, Jeff Rice, Olivia Whitestone, and Nelson, I forget your last name. I was trying to remember it. Any of those folks here in the room right now? Okay, right here, right in the back. Ann Newton and Oscar Owens was also there. Those are the folks from your union that helped to carry on that kind of work. Give them a round of applause, please. Now, the reason I do that is because folks are worthy. They work hard and they deserve recognition. Every time I go into a city where there's an APRI chapter, I look for the chapter president. And here in Orlando, that is no different. You make a phone call to see who is really not just talking about leadership, but being about leadership, right? If things are working well, they show up. And when it's tight, you really get a testament to who's standing there with you. So when I came into Orlando, before I got here, I made a phone call and said to the president of the Orlando chapter, Phyllis Hancock, I said, I'm coming into Orlando to speak at ATU. Will I see you while I'm there? I want to just prove my point. Phyllis, where are you, darling? That's the president of the APRI chapter, right back here, Phyllis Hancock. And that makes me very proud. Would all APRI activists please stand on your feet if you belong to APRI wherever you work, wherever you live, wherever you stay? Oh, Lord, that's good. That's good. I salute you. I do salute you, and I thank you for the support from the bottom of my heart for standing with APRI. Now, you know, there are times when you walk into a place as a speaker and you're not quite sure of how to act. I'm from South Carolina, so I'm a Geechee. I don't speak the King's English perfectly all the time. I'm bound to bust up a verb here or there. So you gotta kind of hang with me as I go through this speech. And if you talk about me, I'm bound to cut you, because that's where I come from, okay? All right? If it's something good, tell a neighbor, tell a friend. If it's bad, know that I'm gonna roll up on you, Jack, because I ain't scared. But as I get through this piece, and I won't be long, because Rich Trump is coming to you, and I'm excited about him being here as well. I want to make sure that you know why, whenever I'm invited, I come. The first time I came to ATU, President Warren George, emeritus, was president at the time, and I was sitting out in the audience like I like to do to hear the flavor of what's going on inside of the organization. And he was expressing his feelings about someone who had crossed ATU, a political figure, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sitting there trying to be as dignified as I could. President George, describing this person, said that he would not piss on him if his guts was on fire. How many of y'all were at that convention? So I'm repeating what is true. I ain't telling no lie. I said, I feel real at home coming to ATU with that. So for that very reason and many others, the warmth and the welcome that I get from all of you during the course of the year is why I am always, always happy to get an invitation that's extended by you. My job today is to bring you greetings from all of the A. Philip Randolph Institute around the country. We have approximately 151 chapters, I'm sorry, Phyllis, your last two, 153 chapters in 33 states around the country, representing the work of the Federation. AFL-CIO sets the program, and we have the privilege and the honor to try and institute it within the community that we represent. On behalf of those members, the board, and the rest of the A. Philip Randolph Institute family here in the US and in Canada, I bring you those greetings and to say to you that your theme today is so very appropriate. Working together to secure our future is one of the reasons that we all stay in the struggle. Everyone within the sound of my voice and Americans all across the country know that times are hard. I don't need to go through the whole list of everything being broken down. You're going to hear that. But there are some statistics that I want to share with you. The current unemployment rate hovers around 9.7%, almost 10% for the nation. And for communities of color, that number gets higher. They say when regular America gets a cold, the African American community and Latino community get pneumonia. Well, here's the pneumonia figure. Nationally, almost 10%. Around African Americans, it's 16% unemployment. And within the Latino community, it's 13%. Now, just last Thursday, this past Thursday on the 16th, the Census Bureau released its annual report. They told us pretty much what we already knew. We broke, y'all. We poor, y'all. And we're hurting, y'all. Nobody really has to tell you that. You know that every morning that you get up. Now, it says that 1 in 7 within the country is doing okay, but the other 6 are struggling. Isn't that pretty scary to you? Look where you're sitting and count 6 people down from you. Now, if you know you hurting, you know that you ain't that one who's doing okay, right? But even if you are living under the fallacy of doing okay, think about what's happened within your own family structure in the last 3 years. No, I'll take it back even 4. How many of you have children? Put your hands up, yeah. Keep your hands up. How many got grandkids? Come on, some of y'all are just as old as I am. How many of y'all got grandchildren? Okay. How many of you have brothers or sisters that are unemployed? It's hurting, ain't it, baby? That's why you hollering. Okay, how many of you are taking care of parents? Uncles, aunties, cousins, boo-boo and them done showed up. All of that. everyone in this room had to raise their hand at one time or another, pretty much. Because even though you told your young family members, your children, your relatives, if you do the right thing, right? Go to school, get your high school diploma, strive and get to college, get that diploma or that degree, that you will be able to live the American dream. Isn't that right? How many of you still feel that that's the case? Yeah, y'all are roaming around a little bit testifying to the side, because those who are mumbling know that over the last 4 years, many of you have had those grown children to come back home, right? They didn't come by themselves sometime, they brought company. They brought a wife or a husband, and they brought them badass children they got while they were out there. So you know firsthand who is hurting. And there's no shame to that. Thank God during the time that we were coming up, that we were able to do those things that we thought brought the American dream. And for many of us who are my age and older, a few of y'all who are perpetrating fraud, who are in your 50s, y'all too, okay? When you did that, you were able to acquire the house. You were able to acquire the 2 cars. You were able to go to school and get a degree, or you were able to get your high school diploma. You got a good union job that brought you, that's right, be proud of it, that brought you pension benefits, that brought you a little money that you can put on the side, that brought you spending change so that if you're a woman, you didn't have to ask him for no daggone money. You had your own. You know what I'm talking about? Being a union worker makes you proud and strong and independent. Then something happened. It's called the Depression, Recession, or whatever the new name they want to call when economic times get bad. And now that same money that did so well has to stretch a little further. When health insurance costs flew through the window, and then you had to figure out how to continue to cover those kids who were grown and gone, but they came back with their company, all right? You had to figure out how you, as the new parent of your parents, were going to provide that care. Or the uncle that you could not stand, who ain't had no wife, ain't got no children, who then all of a sudden remember that you the best thing that ever happened in their life, want to come and live with you, and your mama said, take him in. You know what I'm saying? Those are the circumstances of the dollars that we have. And the only way that we have ever been able to do better with what we've had is to stay organized, to stay united, to stay together, and to stay strong in our unions. And that's what it's going to take today. That's what it's going to take today. I listened this morning as your president indicated what you've done in the last year. And there was not a whole lot of noise coming from the floor when he announced that in the last year you have organized nearly 5,000 new members to ATU. What's up with that? I would have been jumping and screaming. Are you guys not proud of that? That is a wonderful accomplishment. It's not about him. It's about your organization. It's about the strength and the basis of where you want to go. It's about how you see yourself sustaining. It's about the power of being a union member. We need to get over ourselves when we think it's just about us. It is about a labor movement that has to stay strong. It is about a labor movement that is focused. It is about a labor movement that's dedicated to helping working people. So how many of you call yourselves organizers? Let me see your hands. Come on, put the lights up. Let's see who the organizers are in the room. How many have ever worked on an organizing campaign? How many of you work in the transit union, period? That should be everybody in this room, right? Every day you go to work, guess what? You're an organizer. Because every time you have an opportunity to speak to another worker about what you do and what your union provides for you, you are organizing someone to be of like mind. Sisters, speak up, because you wear the same pair of shoes that everyone else in this union wears, with the opportunity for the job, for the paycheck, for everything else that comes along with it. Brothers, speak up and recognize that every time there's a woman that's making more money, that's the least amount of time she got to come to you. Come on, let's make it real, y'all. Let's make it real. All of those things help us to grow, help us to make ourselves stronger, help us to do the right thing so that historically we preserve the foundation and the basis for which we were brought together in this thing called the labor movement. Some folks said, well, there's no money for us to do anything any longer as far as organizing is concerned. Well, let me tell you this, there is. I come from a family in South Carolina that did not have much. The first time there was a paycheck on paper was my grandfather's when he went to work at a steel mill, because we sharecropped in South Carolina and we got paid based on the land. How many of y'all are country enough to know what I'm talking about? Y'all didn't always come in a room dyed, fried, and laid to the side. Y'all had some dust on them shoes too, I know. But you got paid on a book sometimes, which put the credit to what it is that your family was entitled to. When my grandfather went to work at the steel mill and came home with a paper check, my grandma wanted to know, well, what is that? When she started reading the numbers, she said, how we turn that to money? She wasn't confused about it. But before, whenever hard times hit, when we made the decision to move from the country to the city, which took a little bit more, and when black families moved from the country to the city, we moved everybody. You got there, it looked like the Clampets coming into town. You kind of got on whatever was moving. You got into a place where everybody chipping in could afford it. And there was no thing about, I need my own room. No, you just hope that you got to bed early enough to get your side of the bed, not next to the one that peed at night. That's what you hope for. That's what you hope for. But when we're talking about doing something to grow our local, to get our union stronger, I mean, those who know about struggle will figure it out. Now, in the A. Philip Randolph Institute, we do say that many fish have been fried and lots of chickens have died in the name of organization, because some of the unions can't afford to send delegates to a national conference. But if there's a determination, you're going to have a fish fry. Or you're going to sell some chicken sandwiches, some chicken plates, some whatever you have to do in order to raise that money to get to where you're going. Because the tradition of having a rent party ain't that far away. It may be revisited again. Do you know what I mean? They used to call them just parties, but everybody knew that small print said rent, which meant that you paid 50 cents to $1 to come into a party on a Friday or a Saturday. You went to the house, you had a good time. If the person was really generous, they bought a couple of bottles of wine. You had a little shot while you were there. You danced and whatever money was raised went towards raising the money for rent so that people did not get evicted and thrown on the street. It's rent party time now, y'all. Time to grow some dollars inside your union to help with your GOTV activity. Time to let some fish be fried. Time to have some chicken dinners and chicken being fried, to do the kinds of things that I'm hearing you talk about as your future plans. Back in the day, when Randolph was organizing the sleeping car porters, and I'm just about done, a lot of those porters represented the information of the new beginning. Because like the young brother from Anacostia, right outside of Washington, D.C., many blacks waited on news to come from the north down to the south to figure out what was going on. Many of those brothers, until they were organized, did not even get time off to spend with their families. But what would happen is the stylish sleeping car porters, dressed in all of their finery, would bring home to their southern families what the new etiquette was. There were dining room tables with tablecloths and fine china, fine linen that was set there, crystal on the table, and here's how they ate. They brought about the news about plants opening up in Detroit, Michigan being a place where everyone could get work. They talked about Philadelphia being a city that was even called a city of brotherly love, where education was open to everyone. You are the current newsday warriors. The message of what the possibilities are for everyday Americans come from the mouths of trade unionists. The message and the image of what a labor union is and can be come from those who are strong enough and proud enough to share the message of what being a union member really means. As a modern day warrior, I challenge you, because between now and 2012, there's lots of work to be done. The other side, and I'm not partisan, I'm just particular. I am from the A. Philip Randolph Institute, where we do not endorse any candidate. But in my particular state, I understand the necessity to have a preference for those who are referenced on working people. Those who do not prefer the working person's interest are hard at work with demonstrations in the streets, with signs that stand above talking about the impeachment of a sitting president, something that's, or killing, not just impeachment, killing a sitting president. That's scary to me. The kinds of things that they say about us as unions, very clear, open, and blatant, being run the gamut. The message being framed by people like a Sarah Palin, Lord, help us, give us the strength that we need in order to endure and to go further. Amen. From over there, is there another witness in the house? The election of candidates that can barely write a grocery list is something that really scares the heck out of me, that says that they are going to be a person to lead this country. Something ain't right about that. But what we have to do is clear. We have to show up and show out just like they do. Your first opportunity will be October the 2nd in the streets of Washington, D.C. How many plan to be there? How many ATU people will be there for One Nation? Anyone coming from this union for One Nation? Let me see your hands. Y'all scared? That's right. You come if you got to start frying fish and frying chicken today, because it's an opportunity to speak up and speak out. The work around the polls is also important. On October the 2nd, if you are not coming into Washington, D.C. for One Nation, you are to be making the calls to encourage people to show up at the polls in November. If you are not voting in November, you are in the wrong room right now. If you are not working for a strong country, you are in the wrong room right now. If you are not in the fight and the struggle for a good, solid leadership, you are in the wrong room right now. ATU has a proud history and a wonderful legacy for fighting for working people. I look at this room and all the colors that you are, and I get a smile instantly, because you know what time it is. Sometimes folks don't know when they see someone of strength or when there's a blessing, or some folk do get scared. It reminds me of a senator that walked out in the street and got hit and died. He showed up at Heaven's Pearly Gates, and St. Peter was standing there and said, you know, we're a little bit confused about what to do with you because we don't see folks of your type very often. So he says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you the option of choosing where you want to go, heaven or hell. The senator said, well, I didn't ever think that I would, be given the option, so I know already where I want to go. I want to go to heaven. They said, okay, but first we have rules and you must follow them. Today you're going to be taken to hell to spend 24 hours, and then you determine after there, and then 24 hours in heaven. So they get on the elevator, go down to hell, and boy, when the door opens, it's beautiful golf courses. Folks are dressed up. Friends he hadn't seen for years come over to greet him, hug him, tell him, baby, this is the life. You have just got to know that this is better than the one you've just left. So he spent 24 hours, had a wonderful time, didn't want to leave when they told him his time was up. But he got on because he wasn't in charge. Got on the elevator, went up to heaven. Spent 24 hours in heaven, and there he had 24 wonderful hours jumping from cloud to cloud, singing hymns, having a really good time. But then St. Peter said, those 24 hours are up as well. You need to choose. So he says, well, I never thought that I would be conflicted about this. He says, I thought I would say heaven right away, but I think I would fit in hell better because my friends are there and they're having a grand time. So he says, okay, that's your decision. He says, yes, that's what I want to do. So they took the elevator back down, and when it opened up this time, his friends looked a hot mess. They were in clothes that were toe up from the flow up. They had black garbage bags in their hand, picking up all the trash that the people from heaven were throwing down to make sure that heaven stayed clean and pristine. He turned around and he looked at St. Peter. He said, well, what happened? St. Peter said to him, well, ask the devil, since he's in charge of this place. The devil looked at him and he says, well, it's simple. The day you were here, we were campaigning. Okay? But today, you cast your vote. Know that you live with what you do. God bless you. Thank you for having me. It is always a pleasure to be in the house of ATU. We love you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of APRI.